So did you know that sometimes yoga poses do more harm than good? Well, there's a pose that we often do, pigeon pose, that when cued or done in a certain way can actually be more hazardous than helpful, especially with the knee joint. So I'm sure you're all familiar with a cue in pigeon pose to bring the foot forward in an attempt to get the shin more parallel to the mat. Now, the idea and the goal is good in the sense that the more squared that we get to the front of the mat, the more external rotation of the hip that we get, the more stretch we can access in the outer hip, which is what pigeon pose is all about. However, if I move my foot, I'm actually moving at the knee joint, and the knee joint by design isn't meant to do that movement, especially with resistance and weight being put on it. So the fix for this, one, it starts with the entry, and one of my favorite entries is to do this. When I take my down dog split, I'll bring my right knee to my right elbow. What I'll do then is access my greatest range of motion using my own musculature, my own strength, to find my range of external rotation. So I will rotate my right toes from my hip toward my wrist as close as I can get, and that becomes my baseline. Now, instead of me bringing my foot forward, which is going to negatively affect the knee, what I will do is this. I want to access the hip, so I'm going to move from the hip. My femur bone goes into the hip joint, which is the hip joint at the femur. What I want to do from here is move my knee out and back. I got the same effect that I wanted, which is more of a squared shin to the front of the mat. But I moved from my hip. I moved my femur bone in my hip socket, in my hip joint, rather than moving my foot in my knee joint. So once again, as I bring the knee to the elbow, I rotate as much as I can get using the strength of my own hip, finding my natural range of motion, and I sit it down. Then I want my knee to be outside of my hip and then back. So I bring it out and back. Now the final adjustment, which is going to help me access deeper stretch and to traction the femur bone out of the hip joint so there's less compression, is to shift my entire pelvis back. What I'll do is curl my toes underneath. I'll lift my knee, push my heel back, shift my hips back, and then find my pigeon pose. Ekapada Raja Kapotasana. Remember, everyone, how we do it matters. How we cue it matters. So I love the way of cueing it to help them find their natural space and then avoiding the foot coming forward to keep the knee more safe.